And now let's kind of talk about something else, and we're going to bring it a lot closer here to South Florida. This.
Florida Governor Rick Scott, our incumbent governor and the Republican, we have been told that Governor Scott will not be participating in this debate. Now, let me explain what this is all about. Ladies and gentlemen.
This is great. Welcome to South Florida. Welcome to Florida. Never a dull moment here in the Sunshine State. Charlie Crist's fan taking center stage last night before the real debate between Crist and Florida Governor Rick Scott even began. Scott refusing apparently to take the stage because of Crist's constant breezy companion under his lectern, and the fan tweeting. The fan tweets. Has a long-standing Twitter account. Fan says, well, that was embarrassing. Hashtag Fangate. Hashtag Fan Your Ground. Hashtag FLGOV debate. Rick Scott later said he thought it was Charlie Crist that was holding up the debate. And joining me now to talk more about Fangate and some more important political news, the Miami Herald's political reporter Mark Caputo, and co-author also of the Latino America and co-founder of Latino Decisions, Matt Barreto. Mark, I want to start with you. You were at this extravaganza yesterday. You know, we're in Florida used to odd, surrealistic political moments, but this one was pretty high up there.
Oh, I'd say it's the weirdest moment we've had in a debate. It certainly is. And, you know, we specialize in weird political news. But when you have not only a former governor and a candidate who likes to have a fan as a traveling companion.
And he's had it since day one in his political career. He doesn't go anywhere without his fan.
In 2006, at a debate with Tom Gallagher, the then GOP primary for governor, there was a bit of a row before the debate over a fan. In that case, Tom Gallagher wanted the fan. In this case, you know, there's a dispute as to who said what and who did what. But here's what we know.
All right.
At 7 p.m., there's supposed to be a live debate. And if you are a candidate and you are a candidate's campaign, you make sure that your guy and that you are up there on the podium at 7 p.m.
And especially because, you know, this fan issue has been going on for a while. It's not a new thing that Crist, you know, put on them.
Right. And behind the scenes, we understand is that the Scott campaign kept insisting that Crist not be allowed to have a fan.
Because he sweats, apparently.
He sweats. He drinks a lot of Diet Red Bull. And so his metabolism's rather high. And it does look like he gets a fair amount of sun. So that does kind of increase your body temperature.
He's in Florida for...
But in this case, what you have is you had the Scott campaign kind of insisting and making the fan such a big issue that somehow Crist was able to kind of flip the script on him, do his jujitsu or whatever, and suddenly it's Crist up there.
I wish I had a fan here in my studio, not because of the sweating issue, so I could look like Michael Bolton videos in the 1990s. My hair would be better. I mean, we agree we would be happy with a fan. But let's talk about some more serious things, because this race is in a dead heat.
Right.
The issues that were debated last night were very intense, and there were some very difficult political points that were made yesterday.
Yeah, and there is a clear contrast between the candidates. Certainly on Medicaid expansion, Charlie Crist says he's going to do it. He didn't really say it at the debate here, but he's going to do it by executive action, he says. I don't know if that's legal, by the way, to expand Medicaid. Rick Scott has kind of said, I'll do it, but then the legislature didn't do it. There's minimum wage. That's a very clear difference between the two. Charlie Crist wants to raise it. Rick Scott doesn't.
It's going to get weird, but it's very...
It's Florida. It already is weird.
That's true.
That's what we do.
It's part of the thing. But and the polls are very, very close, right?
They are dead even. The Tampa Bay Times Graham Center poll has them at 40-40. CNN has them at 44-44. Optimus, a Republican-leaning firm in Washington, has it at 39 for Scott, 40 for Crist. It's a tie.
So, and Matt, I want to, speaking of polling, specifically numbers on Latinos in Florida, with Crist up, but a lot remaining undecided. In a state with over 2 million Latinos, what issues are swaying them around these two candidates?
Well, I think Mark said it right there by leading with that issue of Medicaid expansion. In the poll that we did with the NCLR Action Fund, we found that Medicaid expansion was a very, very important issue to Latinos. Latinos continue to have the highest rates of being uninsured, and a lot of people would get covered in Florida with Medicaid expansion. It was a very popular issue, and I think that Crist can actually gain some ground if he continues to work on that issue and work on that issue in the Latino community. It's going to be a very, very tight race.
Yeah, and Matt, there are differences in Latino voting blocks, specifically the I-4 corridor, for example, South Florida. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, when anyone talks about the Latino vote in Florida, they really need to dissect it and think about, first of all, the largely Cuban-American vote in South Florida, and then the different groups that make up the I-4 corridor. The Orlando-Tampa vote is very heavily Puerto Rican. There's also a large and growing Mexican-American population in Florida that's entering the electorate. And we see stark differences. It used to be 20 years ago that all of Latino politics was dominated by the Cuban-American vote in Florida. That's just not the case anymore. They're only about 35–40% of the Latino vote in Florida. That means 60–65% are Puerto Rican, Colombian, Mexican, Dominican. It's a very diverse group. And those Latinos we're finding are trending much more heavily for Crist. If Crist is to pull this out, it will be because he's doing so well among non-Cuban Latinos in that I-4 corridor.
Interesting. Matt Barreto and Mark Caputo, I want to have you guys back on because Florida is always colorful, among other things, and it's going to be an important race. It's an important state.
Yeah, you got to keep your cool. I'm sorry, I had to.
You did that, didn't you?
I did.
You had to do that, didn't you?
Sorry.
Man, we're going to get a fan for you next time.
Please.